Hi class, it's Bill Berry with another video series for our Intro to Programming IT 102 with JavaScript. This time we are talking about arrays. We have spent all of our time during the quarter dealing with things one at a time, and it's gotten kind of annoying. It has meant that our programs could only deal with a fairly small number of things, or when we used loops, we would discard the items as we went, which feels unsatisfying as well. What if we need to come back to those items? What if we need to do some other operations with them? Then we're sort of stuck. So our limitations have seemed kind of severe. But arrays or lists really open up our eyes to the possibility that things can get a lot bigger. We can write programs with a lot more data, and we can keep a hold of that data for a longer period of time, which is really useful. So we're going to jump in and talk about arrays this week. So we're going to take a brief look at what arrays are. We're going to look at the code that lets us make one of them and gets at its elements. And we're going to talk about ways that you can add things to the list so the list can grow at the beginning or end. We're going to talk about how easy it is to sort data that's in an array, and then take a peek at some other methods. And we will not do the last piece, which is working with arrays of objects, because we're really not covering objects in this quarter, so I need to scratch that from our list. So let's jump in and talk about arrays. The cool thing about an array is that it represents one variable. It is one single variable, but it can contain multiple values within it, and these are called elements. Now, we already have kind of a clue about that because when we were working with forms, we were addressing the elements collection. And so the elements collection is, in essence, an array, so we already have a little preview of that. Now, arrays can hold any type of data, but they must be the same type. That gets much more interesting when we're talking about objects, but we're not covering those. But the interesting thing here is we'll see that arrays are going to treat things like numbers and strings as the same type anyway. It's going to treat everything as a string because it does have this restriction of everything needing to be the same type. Now, the other thing that we got a preview of, again, with earlier versions of forms and accessing that, you can access these elements by their position or index. And so we can get at the first, second, third, etc. by using an index into the array, much as we did with the elements collection in our forms when we first worked with those. So the other thing is that makes this very powerful is that we can write a simple loop. So rather than having to worry about how many items, whether there are 5 or 500, we can easily write a tiny loop that goes through the whole list, which provides us with a great deal of power and really shows us what arrays can do. So let's jump in and talk about how an array works. How do you create one of these in code? So what you do to create one of these is that you create a variable and you give it a name, just like any other identifier, right? Just give it a name. And then you've got a couple of choices. When you do, to the right side of the equal sign, if you put some stuff in square brackets like this, it will put all of those items as a starting list in your array. So in this case, you're saying, hey, I want to create a list called students, and in it I want to have Pat and Chris and Parker. These are going to go in that order, and it's going to have exactly those 3 students in that list. You can do the same thing as with numbers. So I can say, hey, I've got some expenses, and here are a bunch of numbers representing my expenses, and those things are going to go in that order, and your array is going to contain that many items. So this is great if you know how the whole set of things that you want to put in the array, or at least a starter set of them. You can always add to the list later, but you can give a starter set here. But a lot of times when you're working with a program, this list is coming from the user, not from you as the programmer, so you don't really have anything to put in there. So it's very typical for you to do something like this, where you say, hey, I'm creating the variable, and it's going to be an array, but I don't have anything for it yet, right? This is going to be something that I'm going to fill in later. If that's the case, you can just say var students equal, and then you can just put 2 square brackets with nothing in between. That creates an empty list, but certainly one that you can work with later. So let's jump over and actually look at some code that deals with this. So I'm going to jump into my editor here. So here I have an example where I create a variable called students, and in it I create a starter list with Pat, Chris, Parker, and Dakota. right? So what can I do with that once I have that list? Well, I can certainly work with this list by displaying its items. So let's look at how I might do that. To access one of them, I will always start with the name of the array, and then when you're talking about not the array itself, but some piece in it, some element, you always put that in square brackets. So I'm going to immediately follow the name of it with a square bracket, and then in it I can put an index or a position in the array to talk about which one I want to access. Remember that these things are zero based. Most modern languages do that. So if I say that I am interested in accessing students bracket 0, that would be Pat. If I say 1, that's Chris, 2 is Parker, 3 is Dakota. What if I try to do 4? Well, it's an interesting question. Let's handle that later. So let's just say I want to print out student 1. That's going to be Chris. I want to display that on the screen. So of course I can say documents.write. I can put that in parentheses, and I can say I want to display students bracket 1. So let's see what that does. Let's make sure it runs. Launch in Firefox. Here we go. And I didn't get anything out. What did I do wrong? Documents. Okay, of course I've written the wrong thing here. So that's a good lesson. It certainly works. It's not documents. It's document. Let's go back here. Let's run it again. There we go. And out pops Chris. Great. So I have a working program, and I can access the students certainly one by one. So again, 0, 1, 2, 3. So if I access 3, I'll get Dakota. What if I get 4? What if I try to write out students sub 4, right? Bracket 4. What am I going to get? Undefined, right? It's saying, hey, you just don't have anything in this position, right? So if you put anything other than 0 through 3, it's going to say that's undefined, right? It's just not there. So let's put it back to 1. So that's a good lesson about what you can do to access these things. Now, you can do anything you want with that. I could create a variable called, one student, and I could assign that to students bracket 2. And if so, the variable one student is going to be containing 0, 1, 2. It's going to contain Parker. So you can do anything you want with those because they're just strings, right? Once you've done this part, that thing is a string, and so you can do anything you want with it just like any other string. Now, let's say that we wanted to display them all. I could certainly do this, and then I could copy and paste, but I hope you're getting this spidey sense that this is not the way to do it, right? You can do that, but that should feel icky to you, right? Because anytime we duplicate code like that, that should feel a little bit off, like there should be a better way. And what if the student list becomes a whole class and there's 28 of them or 30? Are you going to really do document.write and paste it 30 times, 29 times, and change the number? Like that's really not a sustainable approach. So you can do that, but the thing I want you to recognize is 0, 1, 2, 3. The numbers in here inside the brackets need to range from 0 to 3. And if I do that, then that's going to print the whole list. So does that give you a little idea? How could I do something that will vary that number from 0 to 3? So let's be a little smarter. For var student, and I'm going to call this the student index, right? Because I am doing a position or an index into that list. So for student index equals 0, student index less than, in this case there are 4 students, so I'm going to say less than 4, and then each time through I'm going to increment that by 1. I'm going to open the curly brace here, I'm going to close the curly brace here, and I'm going to put the document dot right here. Now, instead of putting a hard-coded number like 0, what do we want inside these brackets? Important thing. Stop and think. The thing that I want here is I first want 0, then 1, then 2, then 3. I want that to vary. Well, what variable do I have that has that exact property? It's this thing, right? Student index. Student index, the first time through the loop, is going to be 0, then 1, then 2, then 3. And if I write out the corresponding student, I will end up writing out the whole list. Now, maybe I want to add a break in there, right, so that I get them one per line so that they don't all squish together, right? But this should write out all the students. So let's go see. Run, launch in Firefox. Ooh, look at that. Pat, Chris, Parker, Dakota. Cool. That's pretty nice. So that is a simple for loop that can write out the entire list. The only thing that should seem odd right now or doesn't feel quite right is this idea right here. Why would we hard code the for? Because what if we add 5 more students to the list? We're going to forget to change that. So there is a nice little magic way to do this. Rather than hard coding this, I can use students.length. All right, now let me move this to the next line just so we don't. In fact, I can move both of these down to the next line, right? So here, rather than hard coding the number of students, I can say, hey, would you please ask the students array how long it is, how many students are in it? You can do that by saying the name of the array and then putting length. Notice it's not this, right? It doesn't have parentheses because it's not a method, it's actually a property. So that's a weird thing, sorry, but that's true here. It's also true in Java, by the way. So you can ask the array how long it is, then you can use that. And therefore, if you add another person to the list, let's say we're going to have Lupa added to the party, and then I run it, then certainly I get them all and I don't have to change any other code. So that's kind of an important thing to be able to use. It makes it very generic, and there is a nice loop that displays the whole thing. That's great. Now there are some other ways, and I'm going to show you some other tricks in a little while, but let me show you while we're here a couple other ways that you could do it. Another possibility here is I could say document.write students. I could just do that. Right? I can say just document.write students. Now, by some magic, right, we're not going to understand exactly what that magic is until a little bit later, but by some magic provided by JavaScript, this is going to work, and it's going to provide a list with commas separating it. Like no spaces, right? It's not pretty necessarily, but it works. And all of them will be listed with commas between them, and I can do that by simply doing document.write and then putting the name of the array. So don't forget the name of the array. If you use it by itself, you're referring to the whole array, but if you want one of the elements, you must always drill in by using square brackets and a position. So that's important stuff, right? That really helps us understand what an array is and gives us an idea of what the power behind it's going to be. So that's going to be listed here on this slide. I've already said all this stuff, but this is sort of talking about how exactly to do that. Now we're going to also look at how you can add and remove elements and sorting and some other fun stuff, but I'm going to stop this video here because it's already over 10 minutes, so I think that's enough. Go back and think about that and do some experiments by yourself, write some code so that you can practice how you can create an array, add things to it, and then you can display it, for instance, using this little loop that we've talked about, and that's great practice for the moment. So thanks for watching this video. Pick up with the next one so we can learn how to add elements after you've created the array, and also we'll talk about, as I said, sorting and reversing and a lot of other fun things that you can do. Arrays are very powerful, so we want to spend a couple videos getting to know them very clearly. Thanks for watching.